This is the story of the gatekeepers, protecting mankind from the grasp of the evil invaders.
This is the end of anime as we know it.
You're a phony! Hey, this guy's a great big phony! You're a great big phony, you know that? That's right, you're a big fat phony! You're a phony! Hey everybody, this guy's a great big phony!
Welcome to Fake Fans, the Gatekeeping Podcast. I'm your host, John, and I'm joined here with my, I guess you're a co-host and not a guest anymore. Introduce yourself.
I feel like I'm going to disappear at some point very, very soon, and I'll never appear again. So my name's Ben, and join me while I'm here.
But yeah, today we're fake fans of One Piece. Ben, tell us about what is your connection to One Piece?
I'd say of all the One Piece fake fans in the world, I am the least fake. And that's saying quite a lot.
Go ahead. So you've read the manga all the way through multiple times.
Yeah, pretty much. I need to reread Wano, but I'm pretty much like obsessed with it in every way. You keep getting to me to watch anime like Fist of the North Star, and the only thing I can say is that part. One Piece took from that part and was inspired by that, and it just keeps happening. I'm super One Piece filled.
Okay. My experience with One Piece is that I've never read the manga or watched the anime. I've only watched the death battle videos. So I will definitely agree that Zoro is the strongest. Definitely I would say of the monster trio, he's definitely the strongest.
I'm glad you know that term.
Yeah. No, I've watched the anime. We're currently on Eni's Lobby, which is like in the anime, it's like episode 285. So it's Endgame Eni's Lobby, where it's like. Right. The fights are like closing up, but not done just yet.
Yeah, I'd say we're 2/3 of the way through Eni's Lobby at this point.
Which I think Eni's Lobby is like technically a third through this. No, I'm adding up the episode. Maybe the episode counts aren't a good way to go.
Yeah, the episode because it progressively gets slower throughout. Yeah. So yeah,
especially like post time skip. I'm aware that like it immediately like slows down.
Yeah. So considering the manga, that we're at about volume 40 of the manga. And the whole thing is probably going to be about 120 volumes.
When finished, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm on about episode 285 in the anime I was watching with Ben.
Yep, we're watching One Piece, which is, I just personally feel like it's the only way to get through it at a decent rate and preserve as much of the tension and pacing as possible.
Yeah, and it's not like we, I haven't, it's not like I haven't tried the original just like raw. Yeah. Unedited. I did try it, and it's like everything people told me is kind of true. There's some episodes that weren't done in one pace, and so it's like, okay, well, we can just watch the regular episodes. And even Water 7, which is, I'm told, known for being not as bad with the cutting away to random shit and flashbacks, and the episode we watched was insane, because the first half, up to the eye catch, it's just like Nami running, and then it cuts away twice just to re-show you Rob Lucci punching Luffy.
Yeah.
And then it cuts away again to show another scene from that confrontation. And it's like, we know this happened. Like, you can stop. Like,
yeah, we don't need a full episode of Luffy approaching Nami approaching Luffy while he's stuck in between the buildings to tell Luffy that Robin didn't betray them.
And in our situation, it sucked even harder, because the way we were doing it was, we'd watch 2 episodes of One Piece and then 2 episodes of a show I wanted. So it was like, these are mine, and then these are yours. And it felt like, it's like, oh, when we had to watch that episode where it keeps cutting away, it's like, oh, I feel bad. You kind of wasted your episode for the night, your first episode for the night. I will say, though, I watched most of Skypiea raw, because I don't even think One Piece has touched Skypiea.
They're just barely getting around to it. Like, I actually looked it up because we were curious, and we were looking, we're watching One Piece right now. And, so I started looking into their Discord, and they said that they might have a working version of every episode done by the end of 2024. That'd be pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah. And watching Skypiea raw wasn't that bad, actually.
No, I'd say the standard for anime typically is you adapt 2 chapters into 1 anime episode. That's pretty standard. It's kind of slow as far as like American pacing is concerned, but if you're used to watching anime, that's perfectly fine. And for the first 2 sagas up through the end of Alabasta, that was the pacing. Then it started to slightly slow down at the end of Skypiea.
Because I think we did watch some Alabasta Raw as well. And that didn't feel bad either, really.
No, so it was solid all the way through that. But then it just slowly gets slower and slower and slower and slower. Like, people say it gets bad at Water 7. People say it gets bad at Thriller Bark. People say it gets bad at Marineford. It kind of just, like, slowly gets worse and worse. And it just depends on where your line is at that point.
Yeah. And then, of course, I think everyone agrees that, like, Punk Hazard Dressrosa is where the anime drops the ball. But as far as I know, that is mostly because Toei cut their staff in half.
Yeah,
and took half of their One Piece guys and made them make Dragon Ball Super.
That's what it seems like. I haven't gotten any sources on that. I don't follow the production aspect quite as much.
But that's the point in the anime. Right, especially if you've seen both shows, that seems like the case.
Yeah, and they started the issues started around the same time Super came up. But that's the point where not only was the pacing bad, but also the animation got super bad. So there was literally just nothing to it.
Yeah. So I've actually, because I've been watching Water 7, this podcast, it's funny enough, this isn't to talk about my experience with One Piece. I did want to talk about the Wit piece, but we'll get to that. But I also wanted to add that now that I'm sinking into One Piece, I'm getting really personally invested. I am thinking about picking up the manga, but starting from the beginning. To get some, because I started watching One Piece, I think it was 2021 maybe. And then we were like on and off a little bit watching it together.
Yeah, so to recap your story of One Piece, if I recall, we're roommates. So I, as a One Piece super fan, have a duty to constantly try to push you to watch One Piece.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't. I mean, that's just how it is. That's the law. But I eventually got our other roommate, Chad, to start watching it, using my own personal cut I use for marathoning in the background. It was the dub. Yeah. It cuts out the pacing. The way that Funimation mixes it, they mix the soundtrack and the vocals and sound effects on separate tracks, so I could actually really dig in there and cut out a lot of stuff while keeping the soundtrack.
The soundtrack and sound effects would still be there.
Yeah. And so as I started working on that, I was telling Chad about it, and I eventually forced him to watch it. And then as we were watching it on our big TV in the living room, you caught Robin's backstory in particular, and you're
the mustard call. As I thought it was because it was the dub. I did think he said mustard call.
Oh, that's good.
And I still want to call it a mustard call.
And if my recollection is that flashback for Robin is what got you interested in One Piece in the first place.
O'Hara lives. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so that made me want to watch One Piece. I think Chad also had multiple mutuals who had been talking up One Piece, so he wanted to watch it. My thing was that just like, oh, I really like this stuff I'm seeing you and Chad watch. My thing is that I'm not particularly a fan of the Funimation dub. And what's interesting is that I think there's actually some good voices in the Funimation dub. I've listened to Robin's voice actor, and I'm like, oh, that's a really good voice. Frankie is Patrick Seitz, and he sounds very different than Kazuki Yao. And I love Kazuki Yao, but I think that Patrick Seitz, while his voice is different, it totally fits the character.
Absolutely, yeah.
And who else is there? I think that Chris Sabat's fine as Zoro. He's
fine, but the benefit is that that's the only character he's playing, so he's not all over the dub, and he can just be his full range of himself.
Yeah, he doesn't need to be like, this is Piccolo, but this is Vegeta. Yeah. So, and I again, I'm personally I really liked Mark Dryerson's Zolo. I was gonna call him. Yeah, you know what? That is Zolo. So Mark Dryerson's Zolo.
No, of course he was absolutely everyone agrees that that was a great voice for him. And it's just unfortunate that was part of the One Piece or the 4Kids dub.
Yeah. I mean, I wish they could have co-opted some of the, because people act like 4Kids and Funimation hated each other, and that Funimation stole it from One Piece. They had a very good relationship, and that's why. Yeah,
they must have coordinated for a while together to make sure that they could seamlessly continue airing the next arc as soon as Funimation picked it up.
Yes, I'll plug 4Kids Flashback, Steve Yurko's podcast, which I've told you about. It's a very good podcast where he interviews all the 4Kids people, and he spoke to, I think it was Norman, I believe it's Norman Grossfeld is his name, but he was a producer at 4Kids, and he talked about how he had a good relationship with Gen Fukunaga, the founder of Funimation, and even before One Piece, Funimation was helping them with their home video distribution. Like if you have old 4Kids DVDs of Shaman King or Yu-Gi-Oh, they'll have a Funimation logo on them because Funimation was helping them out. And he even said that, not going to give too much away because I don't want to just spoil his podcast. Definitely go listen to it. He mentions that Gen Fukunaga told him that you should try doing faithful dubs and distribute them with the target audience of the direct-to-DVD market. Because he understood that, like, yeah, if you're going to aim for television, you got to deal with the censors and all that stuff. He's like, but if you did some faithful dubs, target the straight-to-DVD market because it's hot right now. This is like 2005, 2006.
Yeah. And
Norman Grossfeld said, I was short-sighted. I thought TV was going to be, I was like, no, TV's the place. So if I had the foresight, we would have opened up a sector dedicated to doing faithful dubs that were sent straight to DVD.
Yeah, so it wasn't contentious. It was just he's gracefully admitting he made a mistake in how to how to take the direction of his company.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely listen to 4Kids Flashback. There's a lot of misconceptions about 4Kids and even a lot of mischaracterization, which when I was younger, I don't know, maybe you were too, but when I was younger, I was part of that where I hated them because it's like, oh, they ruin anime and they make it for babies. And he actually talks about how it's like, it's like we were in a transitional period. We didn't, it was.
Yeah, like I know my thoughts on it lately. Maybe I didn't think about it too much when I was younger, but my thoughts on it lately are it's just a very unfortunate circumstance that One Piece got placed in as a goofy looking show that happened to be, coming to the West at a time where anime was it was the Wild West of who picked it up.
Mm-hmm. And then and Norman talks about it a little bit. There was a misconception. The misconception was actually due to a Anime News Network interview where they interviewed someone from 4Kids, but it was someone from 4Kids who didn't join until after the One Piece acquisition. So he was just going by like guessing basically. Yeah. But people assumed that, oh, well, he's from 4Kids, he would know. But Norman Grossfeld cleared it up where he said that One Piece wasn't something where it just got thrown in with another show that we bought. He said we had a team that was specifically looking at what are the titles in Japan that are trending, that are getting hot. One Piece was one of them. And we had already worked with, he said specifically Shueisha, not Toei. A lot of people think it was with Toei, but he said that it was Shueisha that they reached out to. And Shueisha had liked how they handled Yu-Gi-Oh! And Shaman King. Yeah. Because Shaman King's Jump, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Yeah, so he was like, yeah, we did Yu-Gi-Oh! And Shaman King, and Shueisha was really, really liked what we did. And so they were like, let's do it with One Piece as well. And Shueisha was like, if you can do a marketing blitz, we'll be on board for, just do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when the transition happened, they had such a good relationship with Funimation, they were able to cleanly transition to using the Funimation, cast and everything to continue the series onwards. But yeah, there's so much more information to talk about. Every video on YouTube by a YouTuber talking about it is full of misinformation.
Yeah, you were saying you watched that podcast and immediately
I was recommended a video made 5 months ago. It's like if this dude had just waited a little bit. But yeah, Funimation and 4Kids had a good relationship, and then the dark times hit, the financial crisis. But again, just check out that podcast. But
was there a topic that came from?
I don't remember anymore. I think it was me saying Mark Dreyerson is the best Zolo.
Yes, that was it. Yeah, we wish Funimation had just been able to transfer those over.
Yeah, Mark Dreyerson, best Zolo.
Yeah.
I prefer their Luffy, but Luffy's voice in English is kind of rough regardless, I feel like.
Yeah, it feels like you need to have a specific voice type to kind of capture that. Like, you can't just artificially make your voice rougher. You need to have that natural rasp to it, I think.
Yeah, Sanji is garbage in the 4Kids dub.
Yeah.
And Eric, I don't like Eric Vale's Sanji because it sounds like he's not even, like, trying. It sounds like he's just talking. But I understand that at the time, that was such an improvement over what the 4Kids one was that, like, people were like, we'll take it. It's fine.
Yeah, it works fine, you know.
Funny enough, I love Funimation Nami, Lucy Christian.
Yeah,
I think that's a great. I love her voice. She's great as Nami, and I love her in. She's also Ron in Super Gals and a bunch of. She's in a bunch of stuff, but I think she's great as Nami.
Yeah.
So there are some voices I like, but like I just prefer the Japanese enough. I think it's really just Luffy. Maybe now that I'm thinking about it hard, maybe it is just Luffy.
Like honestly, that is it. And the thing is, like I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again for the sake of the podcast. It's like I feel like Colleen Klinkenbeard it was like the only person who like was willing to step up to the plate, or maybe was just like capable of it. Because filming a 1,000 episode series where you have to constantly scream in a rough voice, like I don't know if there's many people who'd be up to that fully. And Colleen Klinkenbeard just, it really does, you can tell, put her all into like doing all that screaming and stuff, but it's just like it's forced, and you can hear it, you feel it being forced, and so it's hard.
Yeah, and it also doesn't help that I think the point where I tried to watch the dub was actually like Skypiea, where it's funny enough, one of the first episodes I watched dubbed was Nolan's Flashback, and I was like, this isn't bad. I was over exaggerating. One Piece dub isn't bad, and Nolan's Flashback is like 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah,
and then it immediately transitions back to the Straw Hats, and I'm like, oh, that's why I didn't like the dub. Okay, but I will say that Skypiea was the first arc they dubbed, so this is their first time playing the characters.
Absolutely, yeah.
And their performances are their weakest because that they're just getting into the characters.
Yeah, I just remember one specific detail. It was at the very beginning of the whole Skypiea Jaya thing, and the Funimation was so like not used to the characters and everything they do that they mistranslated an issue where it's like Usopp's moves, all of them are blank star. Like if he shoots a piece of metal, it's called metallic star, that kind of thing. And if he's using ketchup, he would call it the ketchup star. And he does that to pretend he's on the ground dead because Nami's yelling at him. It's a little gag. But Funimation wasn't aware of that, and since this was the first time in Jaya that they were dubbing it, they just had him laying on the ground. And the line that they made was, "I am the ketchup star," because they had no idea what ketchup star meant.
Dude, they had to dub it so quickly. This is going on TV next week. Do it now, do it now, do it now.
But I don't mean that to just like make fun of them. It's just emblematic of what they were doing. It shows that this was definitely their first take at it.
I'm someone who does consider the circumstance. Like, I always, like, when people say, oh, Dressrosa looks bad, I always point out, it's like, yeah, that's probably because they were working on Dragon Ball Super and they cut the animation staff in half. I'm like, that doesn't, like, I'm not saying that like you should like it. That doesn't mean, oh, well, now you have to like it because there's an excuse. I'm just saying I like having context for that stuff.
I mean, it means you don't have to hate on it. Now you can just be like, oh,
understand.
That sucks. You know, it's unfortunate circumstances. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how the whole One Piece anime is.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
Because, like, everyone's always willing to jump on, like, oh, you can't make fun of the animators. They work so hard. They're so overworked and all this stuff. And I'm not. It's just, it's a very poor decision to try to keep up with a manga that's releasing chapters 3 times every month when you're supposed to make an anime that's supposed to adapt 2 chapters every single week of the year for the next 25 years. It's not a very smart, practical decision there.
Well, there are practical reasons for it.
Well, I mean, as far as money making, yes. But as far as making a good product...
No. But also because it keeps the staff.
Yeah.
I mean, the nowadays, most anime do seasonal. They do a season, break, go to the next season. And we've seen issues where, because a show went on break, because they weren't doing continuously, they lose their staff.
That's true.
That happened to One Punch Man.
That's absolutely true.
So I'm not saying that like you have to like they both have their benefits and downsides. Like with Naruto, which I've been watching, it's like, oh wow, yeah, they had to do week to week, but at the same time, I like how Naruto did it, where if they didn't have enough material, it's like, all right, we're just gonna do a filler arc. If you want that additional stuff, you can watch it. You can just skip it. Once it comes back, you can jump into the new arc and just. Literally, I got this idea from Shabes where he said, watch the show, only watch the canon stuff, and then, depending on how you're feeling afterwards, go back and check out the filler. Because there is some filler that adds a little bit to the characters, and it's kind of neat to watch. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And it helps you can enjoy the stories without feeling like it's detracting from the arc you're in at the time.
Yeah, I absolutely wish One Piece had more filler, is the thing.
You more filler arcs, basically?
Yeah, like, the thing is, I guess I define it as filler versus padding. Mm-hmm. Filler is they just create stories just to wait until the new material. Like
G8, which we watched and was very good.
Oh yeah, that one was like someone really good was behind that. There's other filler arcs that aren't nearly as good that we're skipping.
But yeah, so it's great with Naruto because you can just watch I'm going to watch the filler later, and it won't detract from the pacing, and I can choose what I want to watch without having to be bogged down.
But Toei's smart about it. Toei knows that if people realize it's filler, they're not going to tune in. So instead, they're going to make it all canon content, but just stretch it out to 1/3 times the speed.
Or sometimes the Straw Hats will go to feudal Japan, which happens a lot. I found out.
Yeah, there's like probably 5 AU feudal Japan.
There's
episodes.
only 5. I swear I was going through like
I don't know. The thing is, I always skip over them, so I never really paid attention much to how many there were.
But yeah, and Bleach does that. Bleach does the Naruto thing. I mean, they're both Studio Pierrot, where it's like, okay, if you don't want to watch the Bounce arc, you can skip it. We're gonna mention Bounce in like one canon episode, and then you'll never hear it again. Same thing with Naruto. Had a really funny one where in the Ninja War, which even the canon stuff in the Ninja War starts to drag on, and I'm like, could you just start getting moving already? I skip over a filler arc, and all I need to see in the canon one is that I don't even know if you know who this character is, but there's a character named Deidara.
Yeah, I know.
And they capture him, and then I skipped over all the filler, and the first episode back from the filler is apparently there was like 12 episodes where he broke out, and then they just capture him again at the end of the filler, and it's like imagine a straight line, it goes all the way out to the left or something, and then it just comes all the way back in.
Yeah.
And it's like I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, week to week watchers are gonna have a hard time with it, but I mean, it's worth it to be able to just come back later and skip over it.
But luckily now they will have Wit Piece.
Yes,
which will.
I mean, I have high hopes for it. I guess I'll talk about my opinions in general.
Well, you and I always agreed with this. You said that when One Piece is over, Toei is undeniably going to make a One Piece Kai. And your theory was that the reason why the animation became so consistent at Wano is because when they decided they were going to do One Piece Kai, they said, we need to redo as little animation as possible. So Wano and all the canon stuff in Wano needs to look really good, so we don't need to reanimate that later on.
That was my theory, my game theory. And I guess it's been disproven.
Yeah,
which
because
I'm very surprised by, because like the one thing I couldn't figure out is why Wano animation started being so good. When Toei could clearly make just as much money making it look bad. I think it's just change of management probably realized, oh, if this looks really good, more people will start watching it regardless, which they did. And that opened up opportunities for live action, and then Wit Piece right after.
But was it being optioned for live action before Wano? I feel like it probably was.
It's hard to say. I'm really bad with dates. I mean, Wano has been going on for like 4 years.
It started in like 2019 or 2018, right?
I think so. I honestly don't remember.
I think that would probably coincides with Dragon Ball Super ended. Fucking Dragon Ball Super. Toei was like, we need to have 2 giant flagship shows, and they both need to look awful.
Whatever the cause or effect was, regardless of that, One Piece started getting more popular. One Piece anime started looking better. One Piece live action came out, and now Wit Piece is being announced.
And importantly, One Piece live action was well received.
Yes.
Which I've only seen 1 episode, and it seemed fine. I think I still prefer the anime. You saw more of it. But what shocked me more about live action One Piece was that it felt like the people making it genuinely cared about the integrity of the property, which has always been the issue with these anime movies, is that it always feels like it's being made by someone who doesn't necessarily like that they're adapting an anime/manga. They just are like,
yeah, it always seemed like it was taken on by someone who was begrudgingly doing it.
Yeah, they're like, okay, I'll do it. And then they basically gave them a movie treatment, which, if you don't know, a treatment is just like the list of like, these are things that must be in the movie. Like Spider-Man's is like, he must wear the iconic Spider-Man suit. He must shoot webs or whatever. Yeah. Just like basic stuff to, maintain the brand and the character and everything. And so they hand them a list of those, and they basically like the Death Note movie, which is by Adam Wingard, who I like as a director. Mm-hmm. But like, it feels like they handed him a treatment. It was like, okay, I guess I'll do a movie that begrudgingly has those elements in it.
Yeah, you can tell he really tried his best to break away from that as best he could.
Which would have been great if he could break away more from it.
Yeah, honestly, it was just like if he wanted to break away, they should have let him do more.
I think other people have said this, that like you could make a story in the Death Note universe where someone else gets a Death Note.
Yeah.
And like it could be just make it there. It's an American gets a Death Note this time. They don't need to necessarily be Light Yagami or Light Turner.
Yeah.
They don't need to be chased by L. You can make a new story in that universe, and since he's more of a horror guy, just instead of the mystery element, lean more into like a horror or slasher element, something like that.
That would be really fun.
But alas,
Yeah.
but
the One Piece live action, like a lot of the lead up for it was like Oda's got a big hand in this, which to be fair, they kind of do for everything now because they know it'll get people in. It's like if the original creator's in.
Toriyama hand wrote Dragon Ball Super himself. It felt like, at least with the One Piece live action, they did at least interview Oda.
Yeah, it felt like the thing is, I always have a hard time telling what to believe with this. Oda seemed to have final say as far as everything goes. Like if he said, no, we're not doing this, they had to go back and refilm stuff. They had to go back and rewrite stuff. It seems like that's actually why it took so long from announcement to completion. He said that Inaki Godoy was the perfect Luffy. They had that promo of him putting the hat on Luffy, of Oda putting the hat on Luffy. Oda never shows himself on camera, and that was wild enough on its own. And so it was just like, yeah, I thought that was a fully just promo thing, but then I saw One Piece live action and how it's actually like, I don't know, it's not great. It has a lot of weird stuff to it. It makes a lot of changes to the manga, so it's not like they're strictly adhering to it, but the spirit is there. And that means there must have been some influence from Oda or some influence from someone who really liked One Piece.
Yeah, that's just the fact that they came at it with like in good faith, I'd say. Like they adapted it in good faith.
Yeah.
Is great. Like the Wachowskis have talked about how they genuinely liked Speed Racer.
Yeah, that's also
and it's like, okay, and they made like what people consider one of the few good anime movies.
Yes.
So yeah, it's good to see. And I think that as generations go by, now that more people are into anime and it's becoming more common in the West for people to grow up with anime, it's not this weird thing that only a couple people grew up with. I think that we will see more anime adaptations that are in the spirit of the original manga.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of time. I think that Gen Z will probably be the ones making the anime movies. It's probably going to start on YouTube. I mean, with people who have, I mean, when you look at stuff like what Kane Pixels is putting out, like I mean,
yeah.
I was just going to say, put that in the hands of an anime fan. He has all those fucking Attack on Titan shorts. He's a huge Attack on Titan fan. Absolutely.
Yeah, it feels like we both know that Toei is a very old company run by a lot of old people who are very set in their ways.
Yes.
And one thing I noticed for the new One Piece anime stuff in Wano, they're hiring young people from abroad.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was wild to me when I started seeing stuff like that. You see tweets from people in English, clearly from an English-speaking country.
I don't want to say his name wrong. I think was it Henry Thoreau or something like that. I'll look up his name. You say what you were going to say.
Yeah, and it's clear that they're hiring a lot of outside help from these young new animators from abroad, which is very weird for most anime places to do, because they're good at what they do. And it's just wild that they're like taking an initiative to make something that's like fresh and new because they know people will put their heart into it. And that's really nice to see. It was crazy to me to see that Ross O'Donovan, who gathers a bunch of artists together to play Gartic Phone, that online drawing game. It's typically meant to be silly for anyone who doesn't even know how to draw, but he gets these crazy good artists on it. And one of his recurring friends artist who goes in there, goes by Junie, was talking in one of those episodes about how he did a few shots for their super big important Zoro fight at the end of the arc. And it's like, that's insane that this... And he's super young. He's like 18 or 19 now. It's crazy how someone like him is actually making big splashes in the animation world.
Yeah, it was. I wanted to also say Henry Thurlow, and he was the episode director for One Piece 1066. He's the first non-Japanese person to direct an episode of One Piece.
Yeah, and so it's like, it's crazy, but the One Piece anime has never been better. So it's like, I think it works.
So One Piece, the anime is looking good now, but it isn't with the evil intent to simply reuse the animation for a second go around.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's where my theory came from. It was with the assumption
we were like, it has to be for an evil, greedy reason.
It has to be for a greedy reason. That's what I thought. And it kind of is. It's a good business decision to make an exceptional product that will get people to buy more
I
products.
wouldn't call that greedy to make it be like, I want my product to be good so it sells.
Well, it's still greedy, but it's
That you want your product to look good.
it still makes a good product, which makes it less evil. It's still greedy, but not evil. But as far as Wit Piece goes, I was surprised to see it announced before the anime was finished, because I thought that Wano was just going to get the Kai treatment and everything else would be reanimated. But as far as Wit Piece goes, I don't know what to expect from it. I have no idea. Obviously, everyone's hopeful that it'll be the thing that the proper adaptation that everyone wants. And that's definitely my hope.
I mean, there's so many questions about it because, I mean, the thing is that people say, oh, One Piece is too long. And I don't think the length is the problem with One Piece, because similar to JoJo's, where JoJo's has individual parts. So you finish a part and then you feel like, oh, I completed part of the story. So it doesn't feel like people don't look at JoJo's and go, oh, it's an anime with 190 episodes. They look at the parts individually. And with One Piece, you really just need to look at the arcs or the sagas.
That's the thing. I always wish it was One Piece was marketed that way as sagas, because like the closest
Viz does try with their manga sets where they're like,
they do try that, yeah. But like the closest I can get to comparing it, one, I compared it to JoJo's like you just did. I also started comparing it in my head, at least, to books from a book series. It's like, yeah, East Blue is book one. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. It's a complete experience, but it's part of a series. You want to read them in order, of course, and all that stuff, but that's one book. It's not intimidating as one book. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I see it. One Piece, granted, would be 12 books in that case, but that's still like, you just have to pick up one book.
Yeah, just pick it up, and if you like it, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. And if at some point you don't like it, put it down at that point. The thing is that, so Toei has been adapting One Piece since 1999, so it's over 20 years now. If Wit Piece was to adapt all of One Piece, that is a 25 plus year project they're working on. Even removing the filler, it has to be more than 25 years, right? Because Wit Piece, I imagine, is going to be handled like a more modern anime where they do it in cores, right?
If I had to guess, and this is based on my ideal way you would present One Piece, is each saga is one season, then it would take them 12 seasons, 12 years. That's how long it would take.
Okay.
So it is a big project.
It is a big project.
People have brought up concerns that Wit has not been good about holding on to big projects. Can't remember the example people used.
Was it Attack on Titan?
Was it Attack on Titan? But yeah, most of the sagas for One Piece are pretty much decently the same length. So it feels like you could make a full season out of each saga, and it would roughly be the same length. It would roughly be the same amount of time dedicated to each one. The only weird one would be Thriller Bark, because that one's just weirdly like a third of the length of a normal saga.
Tell me if this sounds right. Is it Vinland Saga?
I think it was Vinland Saga.
Okay.
I can't be 100% sure, honestly, but but that was definitely a concern of Wit for taking on One Piece.
Oh, apparently they've dropped multiple anime. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Attack on Titan is one of them. And it looks like Vinland. Yeah, it looks like a Vinland Saga.
It's interesting.
So we may be looking at the longest attempt to adapt One Piece ever seen in the history of man. Because you got 3 adaptations. You got Production IG with their OVA.
Yeah.
Nailed it. It came out.
And didn't Chad say that a lot of Wit came from Production IG?
Yeah.
So like we could it's been 25 years since that came out, so I don't know if we can really expect much of a comparison there, but he likes to compare it to that, which had a lot of really good like momentum to it. A lot of weight to it, which would be very nice to see in One Piece.
And it's like, yeah, on one hand, it's like, well, they were able to do that because it's a single pilot, as opposed to Toei, who's doing a TV anime every week. But at the same time, Wit Studio, it seems like what they plan to do is like a core, like maybe 12 episodes a season.
Maybe. I mean, if you want to fully adapt a saga, it would definitely need to be 24 to 26.
So at least 2 core. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously, like you can do more when you're only working on a single episode. That's true. You can put more effort into it. So it's not entirely fair. I get that. And then like, I think we both agree that it's stupid for people to say things that are original from the Toei anime should be put into this adaptation.
Yeah, I personally get mad when when I see people say, "Oh, I want them to include." Well, this is a prime example: the walk up to Arlong Park. Everyone loves that scene.
Yeah,
that is Toei exclusive. That's not in the manga.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very good addition. I think that's one of the few cases where Toei elevates the source material, as you would call it. And I would happily let that go if it meant being more faithful to the original in terms of adaptation and pacing and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be nice if they included something like that. But the thing is, I don't want them to be beholden to Toei in order to make a product that's better for the sake of, moving forward with the franchise and making something that looks good. If they have to keep looking over their shoulders at what Toei did before, good and bad, I think that's just going to ruin the whole experience, and they're just going to end up making the same thing Toei did.
Mm-hmm. It's like, so if you're trying to offer the Toei, no, that's part of the Toei experience. You watch the Toei version if you want to see that, and this is the version that's going to be beholden to the manga.
And the problem is, I know there's a lot of emotional attachment to a lot of stuff that's exclusive to the Toei. Undoubtedly, there's going to be some reference to it, to the We Are kind of soundtrack.
Toei would never let them.
Yeah. But it's like, people are like, oh, the OST is good. I have attachment to so many songs, even though the OST is kind of substandard as far as I think compared to most anime.
I think that it gets better after the movies.
Yeah, there's a few good songs after each movie comes out, and they add the movie OST to the soundtrack.
They did what Dragon Ball did.
Yeah. But even so, it's only a few songs out. It's like 1 out of 10 songs is really decent. And so I was to be like, I personally think, even though there's a lot of emotional attachment to those, I would love to just have a fresh, clean soundtrack, maybe a bit of a We Are in there. That's fine. I don't care. But I'd love to see what someone else with a new take and a new, enough resources, time, money, effort, anything to make a really banger soundtrack for One Piece that's not beholden to Toei's synth instruments made in a very short time frame because producers needed it to be done so quick. Whatever it is, I'd rather just a brand new soundtrack entirely, and I don't want emotional attachment to have to hold that back.
Right.
Same with voice actors. I know that's a very touchy subject.
I do know that, and I know that Toei has, almost as if there was an off-screen gun to their head, had the actors say that, oh yes, if I was ever unable to play this character, I would welcome a new voice actor to take over if I was.
That was part of my argument about why they're going to reanimate it, because I noticed a couple voice actors from One Piece
starting to get old. Yeah,
started to make those announcements bit by bit, piecemeal. Like Mayumi Tanaka, happened to, 1 year ago, happened to say in an interview, if it comes to it, you can replace me.
And that's why it seemed like with One Piece Kai, it was like, okay, well, since this is going to be a longer than a decade process, we don't know the exact years, but we're definitely
with all these 70-year-old actors.
Yeah, yes. I mean, we lost Mihawk, R.I.P. Did you know Jinbei died 3 episodes into his run?
I didn't know that.
The original voice for Jinbei died in 3 episodes.
Oh, wow. And I noticed with this latest episode, because we're watching Water 7 now, and I hear Frankie in the newest episode that's being released, which is the first episode of the Egghead Island arc. It sounds like he's got something caught in his throat. It's like his voice is different now, and it's just easy to tell he's an old guy.
I've seen interviews with Kazuki Yao from that time period, the Water 7 period, and he was already completely gray.
Yeah.
So he was already kind of old when Frankie was new to the Straw Hats.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude was doing voices in the 80s. He's Judo in Double Zeta. So that came out 1986, 87. He was and then he was also Kenichi in Moreru Onisan, I think is the Japanese title. Localized title is Burning Wild Man, but it's a funny show. It has a whole a weirdly star-studded cast of voice actors. Kazuki Yao is the lead. His best friend is Shuichi Ikeda, aka Shanks.
Whoa.
Yeah, or most people talk about Char. Yeah. And then there's a character who's from America named Sandy Hooper. She's voiced by Michie Tomizawa, Sailor Mars.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's a very funny show. It's all fan subbed on YouTube. Check it out. But yeah, Kazuki Yao is a very funny voice actor, and I love him as Frankie, but you're absolutely right. He's been around for a fucking while.
Yeah, you can just tell, like, all of the voice actors, they're still, man, they're really good. And of course, their voices are iconic, and everyone is emotionally attached to them. So it would be so hard for people to want to have anyone else voice Luffy.
Well, and that's why it seems like Wit Piece is targeted at people who don't necessarily have an attachment to One Piece. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, at least I think that's what they should be.
I definitely heard people say, like, okay, yeah, it's not, I've seen One Piece fans say, like, it's not necessary, they don't see this as a replacement, but rather supplemental to One Piece, where it's like, it's just more One Piece. This is,
I mean, that's what the anime is in the first place, a supplement.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they treat it in Japan, as far as I'm aware.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, with One Piece, it's a little different, because with One Piece, I mean, you hear stories where it's like, oh, people with their families will just put on One Piece.
Yeah,
I think it airs on, like, when do new episodes come out? Does it air on, like, Wednesday nights, or is it Sunday?
I mean, they come out on Saturday night, like late at night for us here. So I don't know.
Oh, okay. I haven't checked when One Piece airs since I made my Ghost Stories video, and that happened in the year 2000. So maybe since the year 2000 they've changed dates. But
it's possible, yeah.
Yeah. But that's what I was going off of.
That was my reasoning for why they always kept putting so many spoilers in the opening, is because they figured people already knew.
Oh yeah, I mean, Dragon Ball did that all the time. I mean, maybe it's dub only, but I was gonna say the dub has an episode titled Frieza Dies, but I think in Japanese the episode is titled, like, there's an episode titled, like, Yamcha Dies.
Yeah.
Because they're like, yeah, Dragon Ball, especially Dragon Ball at its height, that was Dragon Ball at its height in the Science Saga, and so, like, everyone knew by the time the manga came out.
Yeah. Cultural
osmosis.
Like, I really liked the new opening, so I showed it to you, and you immediately got a spoiler from it. So I was just like, okay, yeah, that's
yeah. I was like, why is Rob Lucci still alive? I thought he's gonna die now. I'm watching Water 7. Are they not gonna kill him?
So that's the thing. It's just like, it's not. I mean, granted, there are a lot of circumstances where it's like, if you don't know the context, you couldn't possibly be spoiled by this, even if you haven't seen it yet. But then there's stuff like that where, yeah,
it's like, oh, clearly Rob Lucci's still around, I guess. So, I also wanted to bring up, I understand that, like, Shabes loves the fucking One Piece anime. That was how he got into the series.
Oh yeah,
and I know that he personally prefers anime over manga. I know that he's a big music guy. He has said that, like, the reason why I make videos instead of writing essays is because essays don't have music.
Yeah.
And so voice acting, the picture having color, sound, it's all really important to him. And I understand that. And I kind of understand where he's coming from, where he was a little offended that people were dogging on the Toei anime because he likes it so much, and he attributes it to getting him into One Piece. And
yeah.
I kind of relate in the sense of, like, I had that same feeling when the OVAs for Gundam the Origin came out, because I don't know if you know, but with Gundam the Origin was an OVA that was set before the events of the first series. Okay. And it follows Char's childhood up to his young adult life. And what people were asking is, once they finish, you know, the Char in it, the last couple episodes are him in the military academy. Are they going to keep going? And
are they going to rework the entire series?
Are they going to redo all of Gundam? And people were like, people were so hyped. They were like, finally, an updated, not old, not ugly, not badly animated version of the original Gundam. And I'm like, it's one of my favorite fucking anime, and just everyone is shitting on it and excited for it to be fucking cast away. Like, oh, we don't need this anymore. And it's like, there's so much, like, yes, it's old, but, like, I've watched plenty of anime from that era. To me, Gundam doesn't feel like an anime from that era, because it feels like it's aged so well. I think the art is beautiful. I think the character arcs are wonderful. There's some issues later on, and you can tell, like, yeah, they had issues producing episodes. Everyone knows there was drama behind the scenes, and I don't need to be the whole NHK documentary on Gundam, but yeah, it ran into some issues, but I think they still ended it great. And we already have the issue of there's 3 compilation movies, and people say, oh, just watch the compilation movies. But it's like, then you, like, miss so much character stuff. And also, I want to say that the second movie, I Senshi, is fucking bad. It's like, that's like, The first and third one are like fine, like to watch, I think, as a supplement to the show. The second one is just bad, and it literally ruins the tension. Like interrupting. I need to explain this not to my viewers, but to Ben. That in Gundam, they didn't actually introduce new types until the tail end of the show.
Yeah.
For the movies, they had all the new type stuff reincorporated, so it's introduced earlier and it's mentioned throughout.
Okay.
Which is fine. I don't care. Except in the second movie, when Ryu Jose fucking sacrifices himself, and instead of like coming out of nowhere and saving Amuro, they show Ryu coming in, and then it cuts to Amuro having a psychic vision of Matilda telling him, "Don't worry, Amuro, everything will be okay." And it's like, and then he does it, and it's like, why did you do that? I hate that.
Just basically ruining the point of the scene.
Ruining the tension and the drama and the reaction. I Senshi is a bad movie. Great theme song for that movie, but they ripped off a Bruce Springsteen song. But yeah, it was a good Bruce Springsteen song. But yeah, I am fine with 2 out of 3 of the movies, but at the same time, I don't like people acting like those are a supplement for the original series. And I think it's offensive when the original Gundam, the TV series specifically, was so groundbreaking, and that is the version that made the series popular. And people say, oh, it was actually the movies are what were the big cash cow. And it's like, yes, but it all started with the series, and I don't like when people discount the original series like that.
Yeah.
The difference is between, original Gundam and say the One Piece anime is that, like, the way I see it is that Gundam isn't based on a manga. So that TV series is the original and, in my opinion, definitive version of that story.
Yeah.
The One Piece anime from the start is an adaptation, and I would say the manga is the definitive version of the story.
Absolutely.
So for me to see, people saying like, oh, I don't like that. It's like, I understand that feeling, but I don't think of One Piece, the One Piece anime that way.
Yeah, I guess because just as an example, I don't want to dogpile on him. Like I've told you, like I want to debate this guy over this stuff in a friendly way.
Yeah,
no.
I have Shapes, Shapes and I talk, and like I get how he feels. We're not, no hate. Like this is just like I listened to his whole podcast talking about why he prefers the anime or not, maybe not, I won't say prefers, but why he loves the Toei anime so much. And it's one of those things where it's like, I see where you're coming from, but I personally disagree.
Yeah. So I'm just using him as the example just because he's the one who's closest to us on the other side of the argument. Yeah. And it's just like, this is the first experience that he's had as the anime. So in his mind, it is the original definitive version. And for me, it was the manga. And I think for most people who like are caught up and stuff like that, they're like, they have to use the manga, and they realize, oh, this is the definitive version. This is the original version. It's the source. It looks nice and it flows well. It's done by someone who's really experienced in their craft, and they do very well at it all the time. And so it's just like, coming at it from a manga reader's perspective, the animation is an adaptation that fails the source in many, many, many ways, more ways than it elevates. And so, of course, we want a different adaptation that better represents what we see as good in the series. And I think that's just very important to notice. And I think to kind of get on a slightly different topic, I think there is a big ideological schism, even between you and myself, that I've kind of been coming to terms with. And that I think I'd be okay, like even in not considering One Piece, I'm okay with new interpretations of older work. Like, you're very much a historian. You like looking at the past and seeing where things came from. I like seeing into the future. I like looking at adaptations. I like reinterpretations. I like new people experiencing this IP, this kind of story, even if it's in a different way. I don't care how you watch One Piece. If I can get you into the anime, I'll get you into the anime. If I can get you into One Piece, it'll be that. If I can get you to read the manga, I prefer that. But I just want you to see this story, regardless of what it takes, and I want you to enjoy it.
You're not a purist, you would say.
Yeah, I'd say it's. I'm more about just getting the good experience, and I don't know. It's interesting. I want you to experience the story in the way that someone would prefer it best. And if someone doesn't prefer the look of 70s anime for Gundam, but they would watch Gundam the Origin, would you rather them not watch any Gundam at all, or would you rather them watch the Origin that looks more appealing to their taste?
Yeah, and because I'm a mean person and a jerk, you know how I would answer. No, I understand that, and I will say that, like, to give it this is a shitty example, by the way, but they did reanimate some original Gundam stuff for, like, the Sega Saturn, so it was, but at the same time, it was animated in the 90s, so it still looks like a cell animated show. Yeah. It's just a better cell animated show with way more shading, and I'm like, this does look cool as fuck. Yeah. But that's still old, so yeah, and honestly, like, I am a bit more looser. I will say, because we rewatched 50. I mean, I watched with you for the first time, but it was me rewatching 55 episodes of Fist of the North Star.
Yeah.
I originally, when I first finished Fist of the North Star, I was like, they're never going to make an adaptation of the manga that's good. That's that good, because modern anime struggles with those big muscular characters. Even in the JoJo's anime, I could tell that there were scenes where it's like they are struggling to animate Joseph Joestar in part 2 when he's all muscular, and anytime there's characters like that, you can tell that, like, the animators probably aren't used to animating. There's
kind of like also a grittiness to it.
Yeah, it's very of the 80s and 90s, and you can tell that these are modern animators, so they're probably not used to animating characters like that. And so, I mean, there have also been modern adaptations of Fist of the North Star, and I didn't like the way they look. Something about when they do it digitally, the necks, those wide necks just don't look right when they're digitally animated. This is low-hanging fruit, but there was a CG series titled Fist of the Blue Sky, and oh my god, it's the worst looking CG. I'm trying to think of what's that CG show everyone hates, the Crunchyroll one where the guy's got the walk and do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I know what you mean.
What's that show where hold on, X-Arm.
Oh, I think I heard you talk about that.
It's not as bad as X-Arm, but when I watch it, I go, we're getting there. And I hate the way it looks. I watched one episode and turned it off. And that's always been my fear, is that, like, there are plans to do a new Fist of the North Star this year. And I was like, don't need it. Who cares? But rewatching those 55 episodes with you, it was like, okay, I can, my rose tinted glasses are off.
Yeah.
And, like, especially when you're watching it with a friend and you're trying to sell them on how cool it is, it is really annoying when it's like, oh, Rey is about to fight Rao. This is a big deal. Like, this is one of our main heroes about to fight the main villain. And he is saying he's prepared to die in this fight. And then we just cut away to Ken, Toki, and Mamiya walking in the desert. And then Toki goes, oh, I'm getting kind of tired. And Kenshiro looks over and there's an abandoned cabin. And he goes, let's go over there and rest for a bit. And then they go to the cabin and there's an old lady. And she's like, oh, you're resting, eh? Sure would be a shame if someone jumped up and attacked you. And then guys jump up and attack and they have to kill the guys that attack.
Yeah. It's funny, like, looking back on that when we were watching it together, you looked like as if you had accidentally stumbled into a porn folder. Like, oh wait, what?
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Don't just ignore this. This didn't happen. This was a dream. There's tons of little things like that I'm just like, oh my god,
terrible sound quality throughout.
Yeah. Well, the version on Crunchyroll is even worse, and it's actually I would actually call it unwatchable.
Yeah, because you got the Blu-rays or whatever,
and I got the Blu-ray, which has decent. I would say it's very good quality footage. It's probably the best looking Fist of the North Star has been, but the audio quality is still not good. It is distracting when we go from One Piece, which has very crisp audio. It was, done in the digital age.
Yeah.
To Fist of the North Star is like, I think the rumor is that Toei threw out all their masters for their old shows, and they only saved the audio that was on the film reel itself, and those over time have degraded. So with each transfer, it gets worse and worse, and that's why with a lot of those Toei shows, what people have tried to do is find the old VHS releases of them, put the VHS audio over the most recent release, like the Blu-ray or DVD
find the
footage.
oldest versions possible.
Yeah, because I mean there was a whole fan thing where people got all the they got all the VHS tapes for Cutie Honey Flash, and because that's a show you wouldn't think would have such a big enough fan following, but I think it was one dedicated fan who just got all the tapes for 39 episodes of Cutie Honey Flash and just synced the VHS audio to the DVD release. And it's like, that's the best way to watch Cutie Honey Flash, because the official release sounds like fucking garbage.
Yeah.
what are some other stuff? I mean, recently, Salvatore from Discotech, or who's worked with Discotech, had to get a laser disc of the Little Mermaid movie because the laser disc has the best audio because the more recent releases from Toei sound like shit.
Yeah.
I mean, Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball already are notorious, and film degradation is like a big topic now because people were you there when I found out Sailor Moon had a red tint to it because I had to color correct my Sailor Moon image from Al?
I think so.
I know I complained to Chad about it immediately, and it's funny seeing it become like a meme on Twitter now.
Yeah, that's definitely what I've been seeing. Like, Chad works a lot with footage like that, and he color corrects whenever he makes videos. So it's like I've heard him talking about how there are different things that have like little tints on them. Specifically,
though, with Sailor Moon, I set up my Mal so like on the banner it has images of the main character from my 10 favorite anime. Mm-hmm. And with links, so if you click on their face, it takes you to the page for that show. Oh. And when I wanted to get Sailor Moon, the image of Sailor Moon I kept finding on Google Images had this weird pink tint to it. And I was like, that's so weird. So I looked up online to find the most recent upload someone had made of a Sailor Moon Blu-ray. Because I was like, the most recent one's probably going to look the best. And I downloaded it. And I just took 2 random episodes. And I took episode 1 and episode 8. And both episodes, all the footage had this pink tint on it. And so what I had to do was I just took the screenshot of the scene I wanted, dropped it in Photoshop, hit autocorrect, and it immediately corrected it.
Oh yeah.
Like
it just like took the white balance probably.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's white balance. Yeah. And so I was like, that's so weird that all these episodes have this red tint on it. And it's funny seeing it become a meme like 8 months later.
Yeah. I've been seeing it all over Twitter now, but yeah, I guess Toei just really is bad at keeping their stuff preserved well.
Yeah, I mean, and I get it, like, all film is going to degrade, but, like, they were notorious even back in the 90s and 2000s for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where they just, like, I guess it's because they're old in their ways, where they weren't seeing the longevity of it. Like, once a show's over, it's over, so, like...
Yeah. But I guess that's, to bring it back to One Piece, just because that's the only thing I know how to talk about. But yeah, I think, like, the thing is, the original Toei anime still exists. I know I think most people, when they hear that argument, it's coming from a person who's like being very belittling. And I want to say, like, even I would go back to the Toei anime for different things to see it and appreciate what it did right. Mm-hmm. But I'm always willing to take the risk to see what someone else is willing to do with the same story, represented in a new way, having new flaws, but also having new strengths. Like that's what like American superheroes do with Spider-Man and all that stuff. They reinterpret him all the time, way too much, honestly, but they keep reinterpreting him and adding new cool things, and it comes with some mistakes, but it's always interesting to see the new version of it, and it always brings in new people who can appreciate it for what it is. And I think that's part of the brilliant thing about these superhero movies, even if they do it a little too much. I feel like other stories should get the chance to shine as well in that way. But yeah, that's cool. It's bringing media to the future, even if it comes at a cost of certain things that you particularly like from the old version. Mm-hmm.
That's not particularly gatekeepy of you. I don't think you'll be back on as a co-host.
Oh no, you're right. I forgot the name of this podcast. Oh no.
We're supposed to be fake fans and we gatekeep.
I mean, I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not going to show up again, and that's mostly because John's just really not going to let me come back in if I keep opening up the gates.
Mm-hmm. If you're just so open and inviting, and you think all interpretations are valid, okay.
All interpretations are valid, but the ones I like are definitely the most valid.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that nothing bad comes from Wit reinterpreting One Piece.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of high hopes. There's a lot of people just assuming it'll be
There's a lot of people, yeah, even the people who are optimistic are being a little stupid, though.
Yeah. And I'm very hopeful as well, but it feels like Toei made so many mistakes that they could easily clean up, that there's a reason to assume it could be a lot better than Toei in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, what I think is that similar to with the live action, if anything, I don't think you're going to get people who watch, because I'm assuming that Wit is going to do this in course. They're not going to do it like Toei did, where it's every week, an episode forever. I suspect that new people will watch the Wit Studios version, whether it's 12 episodes, 24 episodes, if it's 10 episodes, whatever, because it's Netflix, 10 1-hour episodes like Pluto or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. I think the new people who are interested in One Piece but think, oh, Toei anime too daunting, they'll watch the Wit anime, and because they'll get to the end of that and won't have any more material, they'll probably either jump onto the Toei anime from where they left off, or what I suspect most people will do, which is just pick up the manga from there and become fans of the manga.
Picking up a manga is extremely hard, like harder than you might immediately assume. As
Really?
someone who's been trying to get people to read the manga, absolutely. But yeah, I think that is the general idea. Like they got interested people who would never have thought of getting into One Piece before. They got those people interested with the live action.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that specifically, if I had to just guess as an outsider, that's why they're doing the Wit piece right now, is because, we've got attention from new people. Let's see if we can get them in properly in.
We to bring, because One Piece, pirates, boats, they cast the bait, right?
You're pointing at me as if you're like waiting for me to jump in and be like, yeah, the bait. And
they caught, and now they've hook, lined, and sinkered, right?
Hooked, lined, and sinkered. Yep.
Shh, don't gatekeep.
Well, quit pointing at me as if you're expecting me to pick
That's
up on
just how
this.
I talk because I'm Italian. I'm under the table here. I'm actually like pointing my fingers a bunch and doing. I'm like fucking what's his name, Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen.
I need to watch that still.
Does he do that? I think he does that. I think he does.
I don't know. I still need to watch that.
Hold on, I'm gonna rewinding. I'm like Corolla Lucifer in the New York New Arc when the melody.
Oh, I get that one.
Yeah, that's a reference you get.
Yeah,
hell yeah.
That's one of the 2 animes I've seen.
Hell yeah. Any closing thoughts on One Piece, Wit Piece?
I really hope it'll be good. I'm prepared for it to have problems like anything else, but I think it has a good chance of providing a lot that Toei cannot.
My thought is I'm curious to see. I do want to wait and see what other people have to say about it first. But I will say with just One Piece on its own, I am at least into it enough now that I do kind of want to read the manga starting from the beginning and just go back, at least catch up to where I am in the anime. I think I'm fine with the anime being my first impression of it. Maybe just catch up to where I'm at in the anime from the manga.
That would be pretty cool. Like,
because
I'm sorry I'm starting up a topic again, but
no, go for it.
But yeah, like you and I have talked. I've talked to you about this because I always think, why do people always say it doesn't get good until 100 episodes in, or it doesn't get good until Eni's Lobby even? And that's insane. That's like 200 episodes. It's insane to think that people would be willing to invest that much time. It's not a good recommendation. But the reason people keep saying it gets good at that point is because my theory, at least, and this is something I've thought about for like weeks before even voicing, my theory is that people didn't realize that everything in One Piece is valued and is therefore important. And when you're jumping into a series, you don't trust it to be like, oh, this character here who appears for just a little bit, you don't trust it to be like, oh, he's going to be important later. Of course he's going to be important later. You think, no, he's just a side character. He gets beaten in an episode, so of course he's just going to be dead and forgotten. But as you keep getting further and further into the series, it keeps rewarding you for paying attention, and then you're suddenly like, oh wow, I wish I had paid a lot more attention going back through it.
Yeah, especially because, like, honestly, I've been spoiled on a couple of later things, and they all made me way more interested in the series. I won't say exactly what it is if you're new to One Piece, but finding out that Buggy,
comes back.
Not only comes back, but the fact that he, like, fights his way to becoming, like, one of the most, like, wanted pirates in the world, and is, like, at the top of the food chain of pirates, where it's, like, when you first meet him, he's just, like, a dopey villain, like...
Hey, he's a side villain that you beat in 2 episodes, and then you move on forever, and you never talk about him again.
And the fact that he's having, like, his own adventure the whole time while Luffy, like, parallel to Luffy, kinda.
Yeah.
Is so cool. And just to see him at the end be like, I'm at the top, is so fun. There's other things, too. Like, I was going to agree with what you said, where it's like, Water 7 is just kind of when you realize that, like, yeah, everything is building on itself, and everything has potential to be important later on. Fucking getting spoiled by that opening that Rob Lucci is still around.
Yeah.
Like, okay, where does this... now I'm just curious, because where the hell does this character go? That he's still around that far later, and apparently still fighting Luffy.
Yeah, that's something interesting, is that they sometimes it is just a situation where they just appear again. But there's always a logic to it. It's like you haven't gotten a full grasp on Lucci's character yet because you haven't seen his backstory, but there's a logic to why he would get to a position where he would need to confront Luffy again. There's a logic to it, and because he's still a character that exists in this world, and because he's always valued as a real person within this world by its author, then there's always that possibility that this person living a completely different life can cross paths again.
And I love that. Like with, it was always something that bugged me in Dragon Ball Z, where once they defeated a villain, it was as if everyone had surpassed that villain, and that if that villain came back, they'd no longer be a threat. They'd no longer be important. Like during the fight with Dabra in the Majin Buu arc, I think it's like Vegeta or Goku says, I can sense this guy's power level. He's only about as strong as Cell. And I'm like, Cell was fucking powerful. What are you talking about? He's only as strong as Cell.
But he's old news now.
Yeah, exactly. But the power scaling is so fucking rampant that like to be as strong as Cell is nothing anymore.
Yeah. Also, I guess the benefit of One Piece that it's not hard power scaling.
Oh, no. And I think it's so funny watching actual power scalers struggle to like classify.
Yeah, you haven't gotten this far yet, but I keep joking on the terms
I've
like
seen
Admiral level and Yonko level and all this stuff. And it means almost nothing.
I sent you a thread where it was a guy power scaling, and I'm like, I don't know what he's saying or what he's talking about, but I know you will find this funny.
Yeah.
Because it was like I think it was like classifying everyone's strongest attack.
Yeah, I remember that. Oh man.
And they were arguing over what was Zoro's best attack, and someone was like, well, that was only his strongest attack because he used it before he got a power-up. If he had used this move, it would be stronger than that move is at that. Or if he used that move again, it would be stronger because he got a power-up. He just hasn't used it since he got that power-up.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they were talking about, but it's just a very funny argument.
It's ridiculous. Like, obviously, with a shonen where people are battling each other all the time, there needs to be a logical power consistency. But there's the thing that Hunter x Hunter always went out of its way to say applies to One Piece as well, where circumstances mean everything. Mm-hmm. And just because you've got, you got A at the top of the power scale and D at the bottom of the power scale, there's a range for each of them. And the top of D happens to coincide with the bottom of A. So D could technically still beat A.
D on his best day could beat A on his worst day, basically.
Exactly, yes. And that's always a factor that you need to consider in One Piece as well.
Absolutely. And that's something that I like about JoJo's, where like all the characters' powers are so unique. You can't like, you can say that like, oh, well, his stand has a strength of A, but it's like, okay, but what if the guy who has no strength has the ability to just, the people always joke about stands will be like, my power is to fill your mouth with milk endlessly and you can't breathe. And it'll be like the most powerful villain they fought. Yeah. They'll have stupid powers, but it will be so powerful but the way they use it is so useful that like it's a threat.
Yeah. I mean, that's why the smaller characters like Nami and Usopp and Robin, they're not fighters. They're typically not fighters, but they've got enough utility that they can be useful in a fight.
They're not part of the monster trio or monster quartet if you include Jinbei.
You don't know who Jinbei is yet. Shut up.
He died 3 episodes into his journey.
You still don't know who he is. But yeah. So I think that's just something to keep in mind as well. It's just like a character doesn't have to be strong to be relevant in these stronger and stronger.
Yes, and I love that. I love that they don't pander to power scalers. Like that was a big issue I had with Bleach, where I just felt like this is just like a power scaler's playground almost. And I could tell. I was reading the comments on the streaming site where I was watching it, and when there were things that were happening that weren't fighting, people just wanted to see more fighting, and they were just talking about like, oh, he could beat this filler enemy. He would beat him in one blow with his Bankai. I don't know why he doesn't use Bankai.
Yeah.
And it's like, but they're doing like a story thing. Come on, bro. Like,
yeah, like, and that's the thing. Like, I even mentioned this to a couple of people, and they were surprised. But I was saying how like the battles in One Piece sagas typically break down to about half of the saga's length. Like, there's always story stuff that continues to happen during the battles, but it slows down in favor of more punching. I would rather it be closer to a third of the saga length being the final battle, because the fighting it is a lot slower of a story progression at that point.
Yeah, like with the battles, the main appeal is seeing the animation improve, And then also like I think that like the humor in One Piece is like he incorporates humor into the battles, and that's what's fun to see.
Yeah.
It's not like a show where you're watching it necessarily because it looks cool. It's usually just that like it's I would say it's more fun than cool, and and honestly it's kind of dorky, and I think that's why it wasn't as popular as Bleach and Naruto.
Yeah, it's just the fact that the battles really just aren't nearly as important, and yeah, I love the goofy stuff that comes along with it a lot more than the actual like punching, fighting, and all that stuff. And it kind of like, I think that's why people got a bit power scaly, is because, not to get too much into it, but post time skip stuff, you kind of see it kind of tilting in that power scaly direction.
I got that impression
where
from what I
fights
was
are
hearing.
cooler for a little bit. They're cooler for a little bit. They're not fun. They're not strictly just fun, but they're cooler.
I even felt like seeing the designs for some of the post time skip characters were more like, okay, we're leaning more into like cool rather than like Luffy meets fucking Blackbeard and he's like a toothless hobo man.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it was a bit of a, not necessarily course correction. I think Oda just likes to dabble in different types of themes and stories and vibes. But I definitely know that the most recent update, which of course everyone knows about, and I'm not going to get into it anyway, but you already know about it. The most recent power up by Luffy swings in the complete opposite direction for that reason. He tilted the scale a little bit too much in the cool factor, so he brought it back to more goofy and fun.
Was that so? Gear 4 was more cool, and so Gear 5 he went Looney Tunes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know anything about Gear 4 at all. Actually, I've joked that like because I thought it was cool that Gear 2 was just like his Kaioken.
Yeah.
He's just like pumping his blood through his body, so it literally is Kaioken at that point.
Yeah.
But like, but then Gear 3 is just he inflates his fist like Tom from Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
Which that's I kind of, it's not really an escalation. I kind of interpreted the gears as an escalation.
That's what they became. Like, I had to describe this to you just as we were watching it like yesterday. That's what they became. But Gear 2 and 3 are basically the same level. They're just different moves.
It's more of a sideways escalation.
Yeah. I guess Gear 3 has a bigger drawback mid battle, and that's why he can.
Oh yeah, because he turns into an oomphy. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think it does technically deliver more power at a bigger drawback, but every gear beyond 3 is a much bigger.
Okay. I have no idea what Gear 4 is, but I do know what Gear 5 is because it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
If you're.
I mean, it's as unavoidable as Super Saiyan was. It's
absolutely, yeah.
But I'm very much looking forward to forcing you to watch much more.
I know when Gear 5 was announced, you were fucking ecstatic. You were ecstatic about it.
It is perfect. I kind of expected a lot more people to be angry at how goofy it was.
I was contrary. I was actually surprised that a few people were angry, and that was how I found out that there were One Piece fans who wanted to be less goofy.
Yeah, because you always see things. You always saw speculation images for Gear 5, and it was always just like super hyper edgelord stuff. It was insane. And
Super Saiyan 5, basically.
Because I won't get much.
He has a hollow mask, and yeah,
basically that kind of level stuff, and that's what people were drawing for Gear 5 speculation stuff, and so that's what I expected. I expected a lot of people to be mad that it wasn't that, and because it went in the complete opposite direction. And I am so glad that there's just enough of a solid fan base out there who understands the core of One Piece is fun and goofy and stupid, and that Gear 5 could appeal to all of them. So I was personally ecstatic. I think that's exactly what is the exact perfect upgrade that Luffy needs, and it perfectly fits the vibe of the story. So I'm excited to finally get there so I can show it to you, because you have no idea what Gear 5 is.
Well, I think we calculated how many, at the rate we're watching episodes, how we will get there by, I think, September. We calculated.
If we watch like 6 One Piece episodes every week, we'll be caught up to the end of One Piece, which is about halfway through Wano, by September.
I'm guessing Gear 5 is at the tail end of Wano.
Yes.
Okay.
So, it'll take a bit of time to catch up, but I will do my best to force you to watch it every single day until then.
I mean, I'm fine with watching it. I do really like it, and I'm usually the one that tells you, like, hey, let's watch some One Piece.
Yes, which I really appreciate. And I am always down every time.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, in conclusion, if you skip to the end, we both said that we hate the Toei anime. We think that Wit Piece is based. We hope that they do the Arlong Park Walk and G8 and use both We Are and Overtaken in the OST.
Yep.
And One Piece should be more serious so that we can power scale it more properly.
Still waiting for Gear Death.
Gear Death. What if he goes gear -1?
That's honestly been a very solid theory as well.
Negative gears?
To briefly go
Or
over
gear
it,
0?
To briefly go over it, there is this idea, and it's kind of been hinted at, that devil fruit, relying too much on your devil fruit powers is kind of a burden at some point. It's kind of foolish to only get into your devil fruit powers, and so the idea is that if Luffy ever sees himself without a power for whatever reason, you don't know, there might be a character who does that. Gear 0 it would be a cool way to kind of counteract that, and it's him without his devil fruit power and learning how to fight without it.
But yeah, Gear 0 going to be based. What are some other bad One Piece opinions we can say before we leave? It doesn't get good till Dressrosa.
Oda hates Sanji because he gave him a whole arc and he didn't even get a dedicated fight.
I only know that because of your video. That's a complaint people have.
Yeah, he needed a dedicated fight in that arc. Now he's useless.
Zoro isn't a vice admiral. Is that something?
He's not a vice. He's not the first mate.
Oh, okay, vice captain is what I meant.
Yeah.
Not a vice captain.
Any admiral could beat a Yonko.
Absolutely. The 4Kids dub rules. It's the only proper canon watching order is to watch the 4Kids dub, and then when you reach the end of the 4Kids dub, you start over and watch the 4Kids dub again.
And just keep doing that for a while.
And just keep doing that on rotation. It will make sense eventually.
Yeah, eventually you'll figure out
because it's the second time you hear that Bellemere goes to the dungeon. You're like, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. Where's this dungeon?
You start piecing it together.
Where's the dungeon? They never mentioned the dungeon again. They never go to the dungeon. Where's this dungeon? And then when you watch it a third time and you're anticipating it, and they say it, you go, oh shit, that's the dungeon I knew.
Pieces are fitting together.
Now it makes sense.
The pieces are fitting into one piece.
It all becomes one piece.